Let's jump into NFL price check, fellas. We're going to take a first look at Week 15 salaries for Sunday's NFL main slate. Let's start with quarterback. Geoff, whose salary is very enticing to you?
Yeah, to me, I mean, just looking at the slate, obviously, first kind of look, I like going back to Russell Wilson here. I mean, this is a player who obviously we know just from his career. I mean, very, very productive, very efficient passer, 6,400. He's still very affordable. And I mean, look, we had to give a little bit of a break to Russ after coming back from that hand thing. He obviously wasn't quite 100% right off the bat, but looked pretty efficient in his last couple starts. And I think realistically, that's the way you attack the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, obviously the Rams are pretty big, solid favorites here. People expecting them to get out to a big lead, but the Seahawks aren't really that great a running team. And, if they're behind, it just is going to be Russell Wilson probably passing the ball above his season averages. I think Russell Wilson down the stretch is a player you're going to be able to ride because again, I mean, I think he's trying to set the stage potentially for maybe a little bit of movement in free agency in the offseason. So I think the Seahawks passing game is potentially in a good spot for some extra volume this week. And I think Russell Wilson, 6,400, very affordable.
All right, Reid, what do you think? We got Geoff going with a little bit of a value play at quarterback.
Yeah, a little bit of a revenge game. This is where he hurt his finger, was against the Rams and Aaron Donald's, his helmet, I believe it was. And look, he only had 16 attempts that game, 10.8. So maybe he goes back and he wants to beat a division rival in the Rams. Rams are getting healthier, but I'm surprised Geoff didn't go to Jalen Hurts at 6,600. I feel like he's someone that needs to be rostered. It's a smaller slate. We have some games on Saturday. We don't have the Justin Herberts, Patrick Mahomes. We don't have any of these guys. And so I think Hurts is definitely there at 6,600. Washington doesn't have a pass rush, right? And we saw, and I wish Pierce was on this show because I told these two numbskulls that the Dallas Cowboys were going to absolutely throttle Washington. And the last 5 minutes of the game, that made it a lot closer than it was. But Dallas was completely in control of that game. I think Prescott obviously also deserves some look, but Jalen Hurts at 6,600, I think you got to go there.
All right, Matt, where do you got to go at quarterback?
So this week could change a lot because we do have a bunch of quarterbacks who are dealing with injuries. Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, even Jalen Hurts. So things may change. Right now, the cheap guys that I think make sense are Davis Mills and Trevor Lawrence. Like that game, I do think people are going to target it pretty heavily. So I'll start by saying these guys are underpriced in the low 5,000s. This Houston-Jacksonville game could go any number of ways. I don't think anyone really knows what's going on, especially with Jacksonville. So to just give a pick that is different from this, I think the guy with the most upside that's cheap is Jimmy Garoppolo at 5,800. If Atlanta can keep pace, the Niners have such a good matchup against this bad Falcons defense. So there's a chance the Niners just blow them out. But if this game does stay close, I think Garoppolo has the best chance to hit a huge upside for someone who doesn't cost that much.
All right, Reid, let's talk about running backs here. Najee Harris is the most expensive guy on the board at 7,800. Where are you going to go for this?
Yeah, I don't know if Matt caught the sweat on Sunday, but my hot take was Tennessee's defense outscoring Trevor Lawrence in that 4X. I think their defense went 21 points. Trevor Lawrence went single digits. So that scares me a little bit. I'm actually going in that same game because I do think there is some leverage there. James Robinson, please, for the love of everything that's holy, at $5,400 against Houston. We saw Rashad Penny get a resurgence and look like a running back that we want to roster moving forward. In Seattle, and James Robinson, he has to get more touches. He's the best player on that team. And maybe Urban Meyer is no longer there midweek. I don't know. Who knows what's happening in Jacksonville? If that's the case, I think James Robinson against Houston on this weird slate where you see a guy like Najee Harris be the most expensive. I think 5,400 is someone in that range that you can project at least, I think in my rational mind, that he's going to get the lion's share of those carries.
All right, Matt, what do you think? Where are you going to go for running back?
Yeah, Reid's stealing my notes over here. That's the pick I like, James Robinson. And yeah, especially if this is the game where people want to attack the passing games, and James Robinson was at 2 bad games in a row, maybe that scares people off. Although if they're going to get scared off by that, they're probably getting scared off by the entire season that Trevor Lawrence has had. So just the caveat of we don't really know what people are going to want to do yet with the Jaguars. There's a lot of narrative related things around Urban Meyer, and I'm not really sure. But either way, James Robinson, massive upside for 5,400. Another guy that I don't think anyone's going to play this week is Joe Mixon, and I don't necessarily like the spot for him, but 7,200 is a price tag he can beat. Like, you just need him to get a couple touchdowns, just a bit of red zone variance that breaks his way, hard matchup and everything. But I think Mixon this week could be 3% or less in terms of ownership. So I don't think you're finding another running back with a lot of upside that no one's playing. Mixon's probably that guy this week.
All right, Geoff, whose salary sticks out to you at running back?
Yeah, I mean, running back there's a lot of, moving parts this week, kind of the same, just maybe the whole slate is like that. I think from top to bottom. I'm going to go with the cheap guy too. I mean, Donta Foreman at 5,200. I realize this has become like just a running back by committee, but Foreman is, to me, look like the best running back for Tennessee, like by a long shot. The other guys really just aren't doing much. Foreman also with the bulk of the carries over the last couple of games for Tennessee as well. And I think the big thing here is matchup. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense has just been, it was just shredded by a guy who like basically couldn't lift one of his arms last week. So I think Foreman to me is in a spot here where, he could certainly get off. I mean, Tennessee, it's a projected close game, but I mean, I do think the Titans are the better team here. And, realistically, as much as I'd like to talk about Sony Michel, we can't really necessarily just to peeve Reid off. But as much as I'd like to talk about Sony Michel and the Rams running back situation, it's something we obviously have to wait on until we get Darrell Henderson news. So, whoever starts for the Rams, or if Michel starts for the Rams again, he's going to be an extremely good value in that range as well.
All right, guys, let's move on to wide receivers. Matt, what do we think? Where are we going?
The guy I like for the most for his price is Brandon Cooks. The problem is I think that's who everyone is going to like this week. He's only 5,800. This is one of the better matchups the Texans have had in a while, maybe their best of the season. So as kind of a pivot off that, I'll go a little cheaper with Julio Jones, who has a worse matchup on paper this week. They're playing the Steelers instead of last week when it was Jacksonville. But the thing that's better for Julio this week is the game is much more likely to stay close. We have a 1.5 point spread for Tennessee-Pittsburgh compared to last week where Jones and the Titans were massive favorites. So I think there's a good chance this game is competitive, and Julio's 5,400, still no AJ Brown. Like, they don't really have much else. I don't really have a great sense at this point of if this is a spot people are gravitating towards, but Julio is definitely too cheap in my opinion.
All right, Geoff, wide receiver, who's maybe too cheap in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think Steph Diggs is too cheap, quite frankly. Again, like if you've watched Carolina play defense over the last few games, like their MO is just basically giving up 14 yards when it's 3rd and 13. This is a team that just like cannot get the other team off the field. And now they've got a pretty efficient and just like big play passing offense in the Bills coming to town, who are like not coming to town, on the road in a spot where the Bills absolutely like need a win. I think Steph Diggs at 7,700, just from a pure volume perspective and what this game means, I think he's just priced too cheap at under 8K. And I mean, obviously I've already mentioned the Seattle passing game as well. If you're playing Russell Wilson, I think pairing him with Tyler Lockett in the spot, I know his price is up a little bit, but that should just keep people off him. Tyler Lockett's looked insanely good, like the old combo of Russ and Lockett over years past. And even at 7K, I'm very interested in him this week.
Reid, talk to me, wide receiver.
Yeah, I think Brandon Cooks, Tyler Lockett, I think both of those guys, especially if you're going the Russ Wilson route, like he is that guy. And if Russ Wilson ever leaves Seattle, Tyler Lockett better be in lockstep with wherever he goes, because Tyler Lockett will be absolutely nothing without Russell Wilson in that regard. But I mean, I'm surprised Geoff didn't mention his boy Deebo Samuel as like a running back, tight end, fullback, defensive back, whatever he wants to do. Like he and Cordell Patterson should be the MVPs of this league. But I also think Deontay Johnson is someone that we have to pay attention to. He's getting so many targets, even though it's a low total at 41.5. This guy's getting double-digit targets. And, Matt talked about, TD variance with Joe Mixon. Obviously, that's a lot better with someone at running back. But Deontay Johnson is that guy. Claypool, who knows what's going on with him? I don't know if he'll get any sort of disciplinary action. I don't think he will at all. I think that Johnson is the guy that you want in this game. And there's some other players too that I think that you can play in this one. Again, a low total, but I think there could be some variance where touchdowns could be coming more so in this game than others.
All right, let's move to tight ends. Geoff, your favorite position. Where are you going with this one?
Yeah, I mean, tight end is kind of a tough position every week, but this week it feels like really tough. I mean, you've got George Kittle at 7,500. I just don't know if you want to pay up 7,500 for any tight end this year. I think that the guys who want to target are in the 5K range. I'm going to go with Mike Gesicki at 5K flat. Obviously, Miami has looked a lot better, but Gesicki is still just soaking up targets. I mean, if you look at his target share, compared to even some of the elite players, like say a Darren Waller or something, Gesicki is right there step and step. He just hasn't really found the end zone much. 2 touchdowns on the year. He hasn't had a touchdown since like week 7 as well. But guess what? He plays the New York Jets this week. I think that Gesicki at 5K is a player who could easily hit like his ceiling game in this spot. And I don't think he's going to be that highly owned at this price too, because this tends to be a dead zone. People either pay up all the way to the top guy or they pay all the way down to the cheapest. I like Gesicki at 5K. I think the Dolphins probably just roll here against the Jets.
All right, Reid, tight end that you really like.
I had this in my notes. Geoff will talk about Mike Gesicki, so do not talk about Mike Gesicki. I'm going back to that Steelers game for God knows what reason. And Pat Freiermuth at $4,500. This guy's got 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games. Look, if they're just going to keep on passing this guy in the red zone, and he's just going to keep on scoring. Doesn't matter if he gets only 2 or 3 catches. This price is at $4,500, and he gets just that same line. He's going to 3x his value, right? Since week 6, he's got 13 red zone targets. And again, it's either Deontay, it's Najee, or is Pat Freiermuth in the red zone. So give me the cheaper of those 3 guys. I think he gets it done again in Tennessee.
All right, Matt, tight end that you really like.
I'm sticking to the same price range. I like Kyle Pitts. He hasn't had a big game in probably 7 weeks now. But I just think that this game overall between the Falcons and the 49ers is one that is going to be overlooked because I think most people are assuming that San Fran should be able to win pretty easily. And while I don't necessarily disagree, like if the Falcons are going to keep this close, Kyle Pitts is really one of their main guys. And I just think that this is someone who not too many people are going to play. And I really don't think that he looks any different than other guys in his price range who are probably more popular, like Dallas Goedert or Dawson Knox, if Josh Allen winds up being a popular choice. I think George Kittle is going to draw a lot of attention for obvious reasons. So Kyle Pitts just seems like someone who's going overlooked. I think maybe he's a little too cheap, but he has the upside. It was there 2 months ago. He just hasn't had the big game in a while. I think it's coming at some point. It takes a while for rookie tight ends to get going sometimes, and maybe we see that towards the end of the season.
All right, Reid, how about a value play that you can give us for this week?
Yeah, I mean, OBJ is at $5,400, right? We saw that price came out before, obviously, what we saw on Monday night. Christian Kirk, another guy that we saw on Monday night, like DeAndre Hopkins, that's probably a variance where he just didn't do a lot and Christian Kirk did. I think both of those guys are in play. OBJ against Seattle, we know Seattle secondary. And this is what Seattle's defense does. They play a little bit better down the stretch, and it all tricks us into next year thinking, oh, Seattle's defense is great. And then they're garbage for the first 8 or 9 weeks. I think that might be just a red herring where Seattle's defense has been playing garbage teams. OBJ is an option for Matt Stafford. We're seeing that they're getting a lot more used to the connection, and just more practice time and more reps at practice is going to cause OBJ at $5,400 too, which is crazy for one of the best receivers. Well, one of the best teams and a receiver on the best team.
All right, Matt, a value play.
So we've already talked a lot about this Texans-Jaguars game. The one spot we haven't covered is the Houston backfield, and this could be a leverage situation too if the passing games do wind up being popular. The Texans have a trio of, I think, former fantasy RB1s, or at least RB2s, with a lot of health issues with David Johnson, Rex Burkhead, Royce Freeman. There's a chance at least one of these guys are out this week. Johnson was on, I think, the COVID list. Burkhead got injured during last week's game. Maybe Royce Freeman is the only guy left. Maybe it's David Johnson without Burkhead there, but all of these guys are under 5K. So if we get a situation where there's some clarity and we actually know who the starter is that might handle the bulk of the carries, like this is a matchup against the Jaguars for a sub 5K running back. Even though it's the Texans, I think this could be a really good spot.
All right, Geoff, a value play.
Well, Reid and Matt already mentioned like the 5K range for wide receiver, Odell in there, obviously Julio in there, but I think you could go even cheaper. And look at a guy like Robbie Anderson at 4,800. I mean, finally, like getting some targets, double-digit targets last week. And I know it's Cam Newton throwing him the ball, but the big factor here, DJ Moore banged up, questionable already with a hamstring issue. That's something you're going to have to look at. Anderson could just be in a spot to soak up a ton of targets. And again, they're playing Buffalo. We know Buffalo is going to play at a pretty fast pace. They're going to throw the ball, probably going to get up ahead in this game. Anderson should probably just get there from a volume perspective again. Even if Moore is on the field, I wouldn't be shocked to see him push for 8+ targets. And I think Laviska Shenault, we have talked about this Jacksonville game probably far too much already. But I think one scenario is it just becomes like this sloppy pass fest where, both teams throw the ball 40 times. They probably complete like 55% of the passes, but a couple wide receivers have big days. Shenault hasn't scored a touchdown yet. I hate to play the positive regression note, but I mean, at some point, this dude is going to get in. He's a pretty solid receiver. So Laviska Shenault at 4,300, a player I certainly don't mind chasing this week.